So whatever effect that the Department of Justice and the Biden administration wanted his felony conviction to have against Donald Trump, it's obviously not working. Now, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to this, but Dr. Phil has now come out and pretty much is campaigning for Donald Trump. I mean, Dr. Phil, for the past, it's been several months now, maybe even a year, he has expressed a lot of concern over the direction that the country is going. He's a little bit late to the party, but I think he's been observing what's going on in the country lately, and he's been saying, like, wait a second, what is going on? And it's gotten so bad that he has got to get involved himself. The actions that the Biden administration is taking, the weaponization of the Department of Justice, and, of course, what's going on with this hush money trial where a judge effectively rigged a trial against Donald Trump, all of this is kind of freaking him out. So he's going out and he's talking to people about Donald Trump. He's talking to people about this hush money trial. And he actually polled his audience about the effects of Donald Trump being a convicted felon. And the results will shock you. This is a Dr. Phil audience. I've never really known if Dr. Phil was conservative or Democrat, left or right leaning, but I always assume these people that come to these audience to observe and watch TV shows, I always assume that they're probably a little bit left leaning. So this was kind of interesting to me to watch Dr. Phil's audience respond in this way. Watch this.
The question was asked, I would vote for a convicted felon for president of the United States. 91% say yes, and then Keith and a few stragglers say no. So 91% of the people say yes, and I don't know if that's because they think that's kind of a bogus conviction or if they think it's a white-collar conviction or something. That's something we need to drill down more on. But 91% of the people say they would. We'll see.
Most prisoners can't vote.
Right. Well, and you can't vote from prison. But actually, a convicted felon can't vote in Florida unless they're under New York law, which is interesting. Then they can vote in Florida.
So this is very interesting. And I believe that there are several reasons why people will vote for Donald Trump, even though he is a convicted felon. And some of those reasons include, obviously, the judge was biased against Trump. He rigged this trial against Donald Trump. If you paid attention or have read the transcripts of what was happening in that courtroom, it's absolutely appalling that this type of situation would happen in the United States. And then, of course, there was Matthew Colangelo. He was part of Donald Trump's political opponent's Department of Justice. He was third in charge at the Department of Justice, and he came in and he was running the show over here in Alvin Bragg's district attorney's office. You know, when you start coming up with a lot of these coincidental things, you know, one or two or three, things start to smell fishy. So just because a criminal conviction happens to an individual doesn't mean that individual did anything wrong. And I think people are kind of having this sentiment. They're starting to realize, listen, it's kind of the same way I believe with law. Just because something is legal does not make it moral. And just because something is moral does not make it legal. There are distinctions between these things. And the Democrats, they try to connect these things in a inseparable way, where something that is legal is moral and not the other way around, though. They get to determine what is morality, and they use the legal system in order to do that. And the same thing that they're doing with Donald Trump here. They get to determine who is a bad person or not. But they don't realize that there are millions of people in the United States who separate these distinctions. Just because you slap a label on someone does not mean that label adheres to that person. Kind of like the racist label, like the Democrats when they were calling all Trump supporters racist. Just because you say that about someone does not make it true. And I think it is fantastic to see this mass awakening all over the United States over this. And we will see what happens. But there were several testimonials like this on Dr. Phil's show where people came up and they said, listen, I'm seeing what's going on here. And it's kind of freaking me out a little bit. And it's swaying my opinion versus how it was in the past. And I think this is one of the big mistakes that the Democrats are doing here. They are going too hard against Donald Trump, and they're not being quiet about it. They're not trying to hide it. It's like they have garnered so much power. They have gotten so much power over the past few years because they have a president who is not all there in his brain. He's an older gentleman. He doesn't know what's going on half the time. So he's given his administration and these various forces within his administration free reign over what happens in his power. So they've gotten very bold with this power. But the problem is the people in the United States are seeing this power manifest in very ugly ways. And they are very concerned. Here is one of the attendees to the Dr. Phil show talking about her mindset being swayed about Donald Trump versus in the past.
I am swayed. My mindset towards him since I saw the court, when y'all talked about the court hearing and all that, yes, I don't feel like that was fair for him.
So these people who are at the Dr. Phil show, these were probably former individuals who thought Trump was the one that was a threat to democracy or a threat to our democratic republic. These are former people who probably had Trump derangement syndrome, maybe former Democrats. I don't know. But we are seeing a mass awakening all across the United States right now, all because the Democrats decided to use a rigged trial against Donald Trump. That day, something got awakened in the United States. I felt it. When I saw that verdict or those 34 guilty verdicts come down, I was live streaming here, watching that number count. Guilty, 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 guilty. I was like, what is going on? This has gone too far. And I don't believe I'm the only one that felt that. And I believe many of Americans all across the United States were thinking about this just like I was. Like, how do these people expect us not to believe this is not political? It so obviously is. And it's also really odd that they are so blatant about it. They're so out in the open about it. This is very crazy. And when these felony counts came down, it was like, wow, something in my brain just like opened up. Like, these people have way, way too much power. There needs to be something done about this. But even though that there are millions of people waking up to what is happening to Trump and how our justice system and our institutions have been weaponized, there are still companies that view Trump as some sort of threat. Now, Dr. Phil, he did an interview with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and they did a promo for this interview, and they posted one of the videos to TikTok. And TikTok actually took down the promo video simply because it had Donald Trump in the video.
I'll tell you what, we put up promos on the social media platforms about the interview for people to watch, and we submitted a promo to TikTok, and they said, well, we need to review this to see if it's consistent with community standards. It was just the promo here. I mean, it wasn't saying let's go stomp baby kittens to death or anything. Usually, now I don't do a lot of this myself that gets put up, but usually the review is like 10 seconds because they run it through like an algorithm or something and make sure it doesn't have something in it that shouldn't be there. And an hour later, which is usually like 2 seconds or 10 seconds, an hour later, the message came back rejected. They would not put it up, which is really disturbing to me because it was just a news promo. It was just a news promo, and it's not like a known conspiracy wacko or something. And I've got 7 or 8 million followers there, so it's not like I'm an unknown person to them. But they wouldn't put it up because it had Trump in it. They didn't even know if it was pro or con. It had Trump in it, they wouldn't put it up. That's concerning to me. But we put it on there because we wanted to get young people, hey, watch this and find out who this really is. Maybe you'll hate him, and so at least you'll know it'll be based on fact.
So it's really interesting to see that there are still institutions out there that do this type of thing. You as an American voter, you should view this as a form of bigotry against you. When a company censors certain things that have to do with political views that you yourself may hold, political views that I myself hold. Donald Trump is the person that I will be voting for president in November. I view this as a form of bigotry. The left is always screaming about bigotry, racism, homophobia, all these things. But what really happens at the end of the day is they're trying to use these labels to try to suppress opposition. They don't really care about any of these things. They just like the power that it gives them. But you, as a rationally thinking American person, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, all I care about is that you are a critical thinker who cares about the United States of America and you don't allow labels to brainwash you one way or another. This should bother you when companies censor political figures in the United States. That should bother you, and it should bother everybody. This should be concerning, not just to Dr. Phil. And I'm glad that he is really putting this stuff on a pedestal, because this has happened to hundreds of thousands of conservative figures on this very platform, YouTube. Channels have been taken down over people speaking out about things that they find very concerning, whether it be with elections, whether it be with pandemics. It doesn't matter. That should scare people in the United States, and it should cause them to want to turn it around in some way, at least put pressure on the system, put pressure on the institutions to turn this stuff around. But what do you guys think? I kind of shared more of my thoughts than I usually do, because I think it's very interesting to Dr. Phil coming out, and he is basically campaigning for Donald Trump. I mean, he did his interview. He did a whole show on this hush money trial and Donald Trump being a convicted felon. And I just find it interesting because I believe that culturally we're seeing some sort of a little bit of a shift of people not really taking this censorship, taking this weaponization of our government anymore. They're seeing this and they're kind of realizing the repercussions of what could happen when a government gets out of control. But let me know what you think down below in the comments. Like and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. But until then, I will see you on the next one.